and then they've all put them together, and then what's the reason to put them together? To profit. Well, what's the reason to profit? Well, why are you doing this? So you can buy more things. Well, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're making better things. That's what we do. That's all we do
is make better things.
Yeah, why the fuck do we need oil? Why do we need oil? Why can't we just burn wood and stay home? Why can't we grow chickens and food in the backyard? Why can't we do it? Well, we fucking can. We certainly can. People do it. But we decide to make that almost impossible. Our preferred way of living is to stuff everyone into a very small area where no one grows anything other than weed. And this is what LA is. LA is 20 million people with hard surfaces, as many hard surfaces as you can. Boy, if you got an acre backyard in LA, holy shit, look at all that green. This is amazing. Well, no, that's the fucking earth coming through this weird sort of creation that we've put on top of the earth. But the goal is that, like New York City, there's none of it, right? You've got Central Park, and they just got human shit. Huge stacked up, no one's growing anything. And then constant work. Everyone's up early. Go, go, go. Innovate, progress, make that money so you can buy more things. And every year, hey Apple, where's this fucking new phone? As if your phone isn't good enough. Like your phone's taking pictures and videos, and people are calling you, and you got applications that tell you which way the wind's blowing. It's not good enough.
A blink of an eye, it's all gone, though, that, like 10,000 years and the Hoover Dam goes or whatever, Mount Rushmore disintegrates. So it's amazing because we have created that, and everything's trying to spring up through that. We keep it maintenance down, but we're a blink, man. Something hits.
But we don't think that way. You think in terms of your own life, right? You think in terms of what you want and what you need right now. We are, in many ways, this combination of this weird, primitive, ape-like thing with the ability to calculate and manipulate our world and our environment that makes us wholly unique. On top of that, with existential angst and fear. So what do you do with that? With fucking water down with antidepressants. Give these fucking people some shit that keeps them moving. They're worried about the future. They're trying to figure out what reality is. You're on a goddamn convertible spaceship spinning 1,000 miles an hour, hurling through infinity. There's no meaning to this thing. Just keep making shit. Keep making stuff. And then one day, they're going to be able to hit that switch, and this life will be born out of innovation and thinking and progress and technology. And more than likely, it's probably going to be what we're seeing that these things are that you're observing.
Mm-hmm. I'm not observing them, but yeah.
Well, someone's observing.
Are you implying that they're us?
I don't think they are us, but I think they are what happens when things keep going. Mm-hmm. It's not us, just like we're not monkeys, right? I'm not a chimp.
Oh, that'd be cool. They're from
checking.
Idea.
No. That this is what happens all over the universe.
Yes, right. Yeah, totally.
This is what happens. Here's the thing. I went to see Brian Cox's. He has this amazing live show with Robin Ince where they have these LED screens, these huge screens with high resolution depictions of the cosmos. And one of the most mind-blowing things was he has this large-scale image of the universe, and it shows all the individual galaxies of the universe, and it just keeps moving through all these galaxies in 3 dimensions, and it's fucking incredible. But what's stunning is the relative uniformity of it, even at you're obviously looking at an incredibly small depiction of something that's immensely large, like a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars. You're seeing it as this little dot, but this little dot that's flying through space, surrounded by other little darts with very similarly spaced distances between them. So, Mike, if we see uniformity in that form, in terms of like the distance between galaxies, so many galaxies, it's so similar. They might vary slightly, and that slightly might be hundreds of millions of light years, right? But there's so much uniformity. Why would we not assume that uniformity exists pretty much everywhere, and that all these things that you're seeing that are so similar, you do see binary star systems, you do see single star systems like stars, but there's also some speculation that that our solar system one time was a binary star system, right? I mean, that's one of the speculations about that object that they find outside the Kuiper Belt that they think is 10 times larger than Earth. They think it might have been at one point in time a star. But this uniformity that you see, why wouldn't we think that has it's the same implications biologically, that there's some sort of a biological uniformity, and that this happens given the right sets of circumstances.
It could be.
You should tell them some of the stuff that you read that you don't know is true. I mean, if the stuff was true about the propulsion stuff, I mean, anyway,
Well, what have you read?
what you saw too. I mean, you know,
What are you talking about? Spill the beans, Bob.
I gotta poke the bear here.
Get some more liquor in you.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could verify was what I had my hands on. There was talk of weapon systems, that there were different projects, Project Galileo, Project Sidekick was supposed to be weapon applications of the craft. Project Looking Glass had to do with time, any effects of time in the craft. Now, I don't think, we're not talking about making a time machine like in science fiction, but we're talking about, small distortions, intentional distortions of time, and how that can be used, as a, not as a, well, it was part of a weapon program.
How are you informed in this?
These again were just those small briefings that I read, but again, I don't really like to talk about those because I don't have any information on them, and it was just, small briefings.
But you told Commander Fravor that what he saw might have been a time dilation and not
Well, it could
gravity
be,
propulsion.
because gravity affects time, space-time, I'm sure you've heard of that. And, what Commander Fravor saw as he was in the F-18 approaching it, he said he described it as a ping pong ball in a cup and shaking it back and forth. It was moving very fast. Now, obviously, if there's anything inside there, it's going to be battered to hell. But, my point was that, well, one of two things. Either there's a gravitational envelope in there which negates any inertia effects, or you are seeing through a gravity distortion field. So, just like you're looking at a highway and you see, an optical distortion going through there. Well, the same thing happens in gravity, and the craft may not actually be moving like that. It may just look like it, because you can only see it through the field. So it may be making much more gentle moves. I'm not saying that's it, but it has to be one of the two.
And the thing shows up 60 miles away. They noticed it on radar 60 seconds after it left Commander Fravor, but it was at his cap point, which is the next point he was destined to go to, 60 miles away. And in 60 seconds on radar, the same object ends up there.
So it's going a mile a second.
No, I think the radar just picked it up in 60 seconds.
Yeah, it could have been there instantly, but
Yeah, we don't know.
the cycle
So
time.
nobody knows. That's the whole thing.
Oh, so it cycles, like radar cycles? Like
Yeah,
sends
it
out a
doesn't.
beam
It doesn't
and-
sweep, but
Right,
I
it's
mean,
like
it
turns, like-
scans.
yeah, like
It's a
that
planar
antenna.
array, so it
Okay.
just, it scans around at random
That's the
places.
spy one does the really cool. Yeah, it
Right.
doesn't do the whole loop anymore.
Right. The point is though that the craft moved to his next location before he knew where his next location was going to be,
Jesus.
and that's well documented. So that's a pretty shocking piece of information.
What's fascinating to me too is that you were discussing this, the way this reactor worked, and that these things were not really connected.
No, nothing is connected. There's no wiring at all.
That freaks me the fuck out.
Charge your iPhone,
Yeah. Well, wireless,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a
Well, I
simple
mean,
electromagnetic. Yeah, I know again, but that's just simple electromagnetic induction.
Right, but I mean, Tesla, the scientist, had this concept of
Right, that's
what he's-
yeah.
That's what I'm talking
I mean,
about.
for other
Yeah.
people that don't know what we're saying, that he wanted to send wireless electricity through the sky, and Westinghouse was like, "Get the fuck out of here with that!" Like when anybody could just pull electricity out of the sky.
Can't meter it.
Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't
We had
meter
this
it.
talk in the car right over, trying to chill him out. We're talking about Tesla and how he couldn't be metered and how it all went down. So it's funny you bring it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what would have happened in terms of innovation had he been allowed to go forward with that?
Well, we probably wouldn't have computers.
You think?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive. Well, I mean, forget about microelectronics. Well, this is dumping huge amounts of electromagnetic energy in the air, and yeah, we'd be able to wirelessly turn on our lights, but there'd be no radio communication. The interference would be something would be overwhelming. It would induce electric currents in anything with a small wire on it. So integrated circuits, transistors would be disintegrated before they were even, tested for operation. So it would
Maybe it would
destroy.
have fucked us up.
Yeah, it would have stopped us dead. It'd be great. You could turn lighters on and heaters from all over the place with no wires, but it would stop modern electronics.
And if we became dependent on it, it would almost be like our dependence on fossil fuels. Although it's destructive, it's very difficult for us to get off the nipple.
It would have changed the course of how we developed, which is so interesting when you talk about it. A civilization, another star system, didn't even start with fossil fuels. They had 115 naturally on their planet, and they're like, cool, anti-gravity's pretty awesome.
Well, the fact that they
I think
didn't
it's important that actually happened.
Yeah.
It might have been stopped in its tracks for a reason.
Whoa. And I think it's incredibly difficult for us to imagine technological progression under another timeline other than the one that we've experienced.
Yeah, that's difficult.
If we imagine what this alien race must have been like, and I mean, God, just to be able to see something, obviously we've seen it in different life forms, right? Like we see the life of certain beetles in comparison to the life of certain fish. Very, very different existence, very different life cycles.
Octopus.
Yeah, octopus. I mean, we see all these different variables in terms of biological entities on Earth, but we don't see it in terms of technological innovation, as we're the only one that's intelligent that can innovate. We have intelligent creatures, but they're in the ocean. The only other thing that are like us are dolphins and orcas and whales, and they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment. And subsequently, because they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment, we put them in fish tanks. And we're like, get in the tank, do some tricks.
Right.
The only thing he saw in the craft, if we were considering Bob's story, the only thing that he saw in the craft that he related to, that looked like a human could make, was this honeycomb hatch. And I always loved that because you're like obsessed with this thing that you could recognize.
I only focus on that because it was the one thing that I understood how it worked.
What was it?
And it was the access to the level below, and
What if
it
the
was
traveler's not what we thought it was?
Well, if you take you have a 6-pack of beer and you take out the cardboard dividers, set it on the table, you can put a lot of pressure on the top. But if you push it from the sides, it collapses flat. So it was something like that in a honeycomb shape that was essentially some sort of sheet metal, and you could walk on that in the upper layer, but if you took the corner, stuck your finger in, and pushed, it collapsed and made an entryway. So I thought that was a really unique. I'd never seen that before, and it was the only thing in the craft that made absolute
had
sense
my
to me.
reservations
We
about
can make
Kylo
that,
Energy,
and all that is a hatchway.
Was there any discussion about the materials that were used to
something to
make
be
the craft?
I'm sure there was, but that was the metallurgy division. It had nothing to do with us.
So you never got
Not even the slightest preview. I don't even know if it was metal or it was ceramic. I think there's a fine line between the two.
Now, one of the things that's happened to you that has allowed people to discredit you was there's obviously been some sort of an effort to erase your past.
Yeah.
Some sort of an effort to erase your education history, your employment history at Los Alamos. In fact, the only way your employment history was proven at Los Alamos is someone got a list, a directory of the employees from the past, and read into it, and you were on that list. So it proved that you worked there, even though people were trying to deny it. They were trying to use that as a way to discredit you, that you never did work at Los Alamos. You weren't really a scientist. What was that like to experience? I mean, of course, we're talking about the 1980s, the 1990s, when you could get away with something like that.
Yeah, obviously there were a lot less records on computers at that time. It was still file cabinets and folders. But that was frightening. That was one of the first things.
What happened?
I think George Knapp was the first one that uncovered that. I mean, he saw my birth certificate disappear.
It disappeared.
Yeah,
there was no record of you.
Yeah, there was no record of that. There was no record.
His mom tells me about that. Like it was.
This is the government, by the way.
He's gonna.
They've actually done this to this guy.
I don't doubt it.
Okay. But people doubt me.
Keep it going.
You know what they did to him? They erased him as much of his credentials as they could.
Yeah.
Give me some more water, please. Thank you. The IRS audited his friends, family, everyone he knows. They pulled security clearances for anyone connected to him. Like, so you could have been minding your business, and suddenly your clearance gets pulled, and you don't know why.
They're trying to do it, so then people kind of figure it out themselves, and they turn on this guy.
Sort of, yeah. And people want to act like I'm crazy for saying the stuff I said about getting ignored and all that.
The more I watch these clips, the more I'm like...
All that shit the government does, and it's somehow far-fetched that I call, and I'm on hold for hours and hours, but you call, and you can get my doctors faster. Black Mirror-esque bullshit.
You know, his real person is frightening for her.
But even the Los
So how about
Alamos
they don't
thing
take your
really
joy?
surprised me, and that they were so adamant that no, this guy never worked here. Don't be ridiculous. And George went back and forth, you know,
I got the letters on the wall, yeah.
months. I mean, it was ridiculous. But fortunately, somebody came up with a 1982 phone book directory. I mean, and also, originally I told you. You know, when I worked there, I was on the front page of the paper, so they were still able to archive, you know, bring that back from the archives, and you know, Bob Lazar, a physicist working here at Los Alamos, so there was at least something there. But somehow George came up with the phone directory.
And then Bob took George with cameras into Los Alamos.
Oh yeah. So we flew out there, and I said, "Look, come on in. I'll show you where I worked. We'll go in. We'll meet people." And George went with me, and you know,
And
filmed
you knew how to
inside there.
navigate the place. You'd
Oh
obviously
yeah, and
been-
you know, met people, and you know, and
Los
so there was no
Alamos was
problem.
also the place where they had the machine that was able to read the size of your digits.
No, that was
That
at Los
wasn't?
Alamos. That was S4.
That was S4. And explain that.
So now this was back in the 80s.
And this is
Yeah.
back in the 80s where when you discuss this, people are like, this doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it?
It was a way, you know, this was before fingerprint scanners and, you know, any high resolution scanner at that time. So what it was a device that had a little picture of a hand on a glass plate with pins in it, so you could jam your hand in there. And there was a bright light above it and a sensor underneath. And when you put your hand in there, the light would turn on, and it would measure the bones in your finger because the light shone through your bones. And apparently, the length of the bones in your fingers are extremely unique and easy to measure. And they used that. When you put your hands on there, the light would turn on and your badge would pop out.
There's it right
Oh, there it is. That's it. And I tried to describe this to people, and they said, that is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. And I said, hey, my badge came out of that thing. I put my hand on it, badge popped out, and that's how I could open the doors and get into S4. And, you know...
And everybody discredited that. They said it was bullshit, it was science fiction. And Jeremy, you found this.
I found it through a good friend of mine named Tyler Rogaway, and he had some good sources inside of Area 52 where they also used these for the stealth program right around that time. So now I've got all these people that worked within who, you know, said only if you're in certain programs would we use this technology. It was kind of shit, actually. They didn't keep it for very long, beginning of biometrics. So I was able to reveal it in my film. I kept my mouth shut until I showed it to Bob. You know, in the movie, the first time he saw it was how you see it in the documentary. That's his genuine reaction. I'm getting goosebumps.
That was a great idea, the way you did it.
Thank you, man, because you know what? Guess what? I'm actually trying to see if he's telling the truth. That's how I started. You know, that's how he started. So it was really cool to see that, and that you get to see it, his actual reaction.
Has that been verified by other people?
Yeah, so to me it has. Personally, I get emails every day, and people are telling me where these are used and how they're used, and to send me photos. I got a lot of photos of Identimats now.
Well, how they were used, right? They're not
how they were used, but I don't. The most recent one was way more recent than I thought in another country, but yeah, that technology was used. So what's so funny is that this technology, even in the Area 52 where they use them for Tonopah, one of the guys who will go on camera with me, he will do an interview with me. He was a technician for one of these, and he hated them because they were really bad. They always broke down and he was a technician for them. Now, he won't tell me where. He worked at Area 52, so it's probably Tonopah. It's very separated, even on base, but yeah.
So there was that.
Yeah.
There is your education record. That was also, like, what happened with that?
Well, that disappeared also. You know, that I've never gone anywhere for education. I never attended any classes at Caltech. I never attended anything at MIT.
You did attend classes in those places, though.
I did attend classes in those places.
Do you know anybody that you went to school with?
Yes, I do.
And have they verified that they went to school with you?
Well, I give Jeremy some names, but the reason I don't say these names publicly is because every single time I mention a name, somebody gets in trouble.
They don't want to be.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. But what is that experience like, seeing your birth certificate erased, seeing your employment
Well, it's
history?
Frightening. It's absolutely frightening.
It's also the fuel
They can do this
that
whenever
the
they want.
debunkers use, the so-called air quote skeptics. I don't like the term skeptics. I'm going to say this publicly because I really want to say this privately. I think it's a sloppy, lazy way to look at things, to just be a skeptic.
It is.
Look,
I want people to be objective. And I think there's a lot of things you should be skeptical of. I think you should look at things from a hardline science perspective. You should be objective. But the idea of skeptics, the problem with that is you're always looking for things to be bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous, because I think some
We're always
things
looking
aren't
for things to
bullshit.
It's confirmation bias on the other end. You're just deciding to take a square thing and put it in a round hole no matter what.
And I find a lot of them to be lazy.
Yep.
A lot of them to be lazy.
Instead of investigating, they're just like,
they're
well,
always
if you can't prove it,
putting
it's not
into
real.
that box, instead of going, instead of just separating the
That's what happens with my mental health
shit.
shit.
Game, and the game
Trying to get people to listen to me.
Bullshit. I want to call bullshit, and I'm going to line up all these reasons why it's bullshit, and I'm going to ignore anything that might be contrary to that definition.
Yeah, that does.
Every time I'm thinking I'm going to catch him in something, you know, all along this process, I found Dr. Krangle. He came forward and said I was in security briefings with Bob Lazar, the physicist at Los Alamos. He went on the record with me. Now, the other people I talked with, why won't they go on the record with me? Because they're still working there. So that's the difference, right? What can the public have, right?
Or even if they're not working there, they want to live their lives. Why, I mean, obviously, people have seen what's happened to you.
Mike Thigpen, after 30 years.
Yeah, really, if you look at all the information on, concerning my accounts, that's verifiable. It can't possibly be a bullshit story anymore. It's really way past that point.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was my
Thigpen is. I mean, how could I possibly know?
So Mike Thigpen
I'm gonna change it. I'm not keeping it like this. But
the guy that did the security clearances to go to the base.
Oh wow, this thing has eyes.
You work with.
He said he did.
Right.
And
like
George,
inside of it.
You know, George
it's
didn't
a creepy
believe
statue
George
face
put through
underneath.
4 polygraph tests, right? He tried to see, man, this is a big risk. It sounds interesting, but let's see if he's telling the truth. One of the things was, Bob said there was a guy named Mike Thigpen. He did security clearances for the base, and that's a weird name. It's very specific. For 30 years, George found this guy in this weird department that he didn't even know it was Mike Thigpen. The guy wouldn't talk to me, ghosted him, totally ghosted him for 30 years. Used Facebook and Google image match through
like some sort of riot soldier.
I was able to find him after 30 years, and I talked to him 3 times on the phone. He lives on the East Coast. He almost went on camera with me. Confirmed that he did security clearances for the base in 1989. Confirmed he remembers Bob Lazar. And what you don't know is there's a handwritten note that a friend of yours has from Mike.
What?
I know, I'm going to give it to you later.
Hey, look.
But that is real. That is actual. So
a handwritten note that says what?
You know, like
this is new to me.
So when
When they do security clearances, they go through all your friends and family.
And they go to your friends' family, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is to Bob, and I had people come to me for a friend of mine that's serving, and they're doing a security clearance for him, and even though I'm like the UFO guy, they did, the FBI come and visit my house and make sure that they talk about my friend, and they lift a little card. And when my wife told them to get away, because she didn't know who they were, they left a little card. It's super cute now. Back then it was a handwritten note, and his friend has it for him that you haven't seen in
Oh my God.
2 decades. So if you're listening,
How
friend,
come you're telling me this
I
now?
don't know why I'm telling
What is
you
this
that.
card?
It's just a little handwritten note with Mike Thigpen's signature.
I mean, a card like a postcard.
Like a piece of paper that he left on the door saying when Bob gets back or whatever it says on it. So it's just another little funny thing. I found the guy, he does the security clearances. He admitted to me he did it. And he admitted to me he was dodging George Knapp because when George said his name on the news, he dropped his fork into his steak or into his potatoes or whatever, and he's looking at his wife. He was in trouble. His name's never supposed to be out there, like just a security clearance guy. But you don't want national attention associated with anything Bob has to say. But anyway, this unique name Bob said for 30 years, and the guy ghosted George Knapp. George could prove he existed. He actually talked to me, man. He talked to me 3 times. He almost went on camera with me. It's just crazy. What happens after 30 years? You just get more info.
Well, that's one of the reasons why when you and me and Jeremy and George Knapp had that conversation on the phone,
Yeah.
I said, I think what we can do with this podcast is important. I really do.
We
I
end
think
up
it's important for
linking
people
up
to
with,
hear this from you in a very clear,
an extraterrestrial
just very concise
civilization.
way. And if you
Or
examine all the
an
information that you said
extraterrestrial
today, if
collective
you
of
look at all the
civilizations.
things the detractors have said, if you look at all of the new recent
I
evidence
will
that's coming out,
suddenly
all
become
these
extremely valuable.
really high-level people in the military and the government that are
Because of my
discussing
knack for just
this,
figuring things out.
it gives you far more
People like
credibility
me, or-
than you would have
or,
had
you know,
in
people
the
like that.
1980s when this came out.
Fuck yes, you can't
Yeah,
ignore
they're
his
the
story
ones that
just
figure
because
stuff
you
out.
don't like it anymore.
That's why I thought it was important that you come out and
They're the
refresh
monkeys that
the
picked up
world's
the rock
memory and let
to
people
smash
know.
something.
And like I said, I don't want to say I'm a fan of yours, but I guess I'm a fan of yours. As a human being, I'm a fan of yours. But I've been following you for decades. I've been following the story for decades. I mean,
No kidding.
I have VHS tapes.
Bob, like a lot of the world has,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Well, anybody
You don't
that
get it.
has any sort of a vested interest or just a fascination with UFOs has followed your story because there's no one else. There's no one else that comes forward. There's some guy who said, I worked underground with the aliens, they shot my hand off. Like, there's a bunch of like wacky dudes. They're underground, there's bases, they're shooting lasers through the Earth's crust, and they move them at light speed. There's a lot of those guys. They seem schizophrenic, they seem crazy, they might even be disinformation agents. They might be people that are designed to muddy the waters, which for sure
Bob
has
Lazar could
happened.
be that.
People are coming forward though now. It's amazing. And by doing this, what
Joe
you're doing
Rogan
is providing
could be that.
opportunities for Bob to tell
They
the
could-
story.
this is-
you
could be
know,
what's
believe it
happening
or
right
not, he
when
can
we're
tell the
watching
story.
this. This could be
It's
just
amazing because
misinformation.
more people will come forward now.
That's the kind of
that
people you're
are
dealing with. You're
involved in
dealing
these
with government.
projects. They'll come forward to
The
you, to
people
me.
that are
They're
in power
coming
and
forward.
control.
And so what you've done here is
Knowledge
provide
is
that
power, so
opportunity
why would
if
they
they
let you
need
have
it.
it?
And it's amazing. I just want to say, Bob.
Just don't come forward to me.
No, don't come forward to Bob.
Why do you think all the
Why
best
were
schools
you-
are
Why were
private?
you freaking nauseous at the beginning of this? Like so upset. Why'd you have a migraine? Because that started off so hard. My God, I was sitting here like, did this?
Well, why are you asking him why?
There's
It's
a reason why
obvious.
education's so
Anxiety. The guy's
expensive.
gone through 30 fucking years of being
It's not because
persecuted.
of
They
hospital.
erased his birth certificate.
I just want
What
to
do
hear
you
him.
hear
it's
from
a
him?
I want to hear him say. I want them to
Why
hear
do I
him.
have to say that?
You
Joe
don't.
just said
We
it.
get it.
I step out.
Okay.
Settle down. Yeah, I get it. It was hard for you to get him here, you know, and I
It was hard
appreciate.
for us.
Yeah.
You
Wow, you did a
Well,
lot more than me.
what really annoys me are the people that think, you know, you guys just came up with the story to make a bunch of money or get a bunch of, you know, attention. And
That's
look,
a good point. So
look,
please explain that. You've
first
never
of all,
made any
I don't
money
get
I hate
any
people like that,
money
too.
out of
Like,
this at all.
this
I
hurts
didn't
him,
even
if
let you
anything.
guys buy plane tickets
I
for
think
me to
he's a
come
nut
out
job.
here or anything. I
And
mean,
at best, I think he's a
anytime,
nut
like
job.
when Jeremy previewed, I guess, the movie Up in Michigan. I mean, it brought in like a couple $1,000s. I made sure that $2,000 went to science programs at the local high schools there.
It's like dirty money. He doesn't want to touch it.
I don't take any money from this stuff. And as far as attention, I hate fucking attention. I don't like being on shows. I just want to kind of hide in the corner and do my own thing. So I got enough hugs when I was a kid. Okay, I don't need any attention. So
front of his house and shit.
If you think somehow we came up with this thing, then you got to tell me why we did it.
Well, you've done a great job of making sure you have your bases covered in that regard, that you haven't profited off of this. And
It's like when I tell people about me.
Money that came your way to science programs. It doesn't make any sense.
Everyone knows what BPDs are and a lot of shit.
I mean, what I've gotten out of here is what I thought I was going to get out of here when I watched the documentary. But what you're saying makes sense.
It drives me crazy because, like,
that happened exactly like I said.
There could be some person with Tourette syndrome that their tick is like saying certain things, and they could be running around saying some of the most heinous fucking things ever.
Really don't
racist, bigoted, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic.
I know that you have paid a
terroristic, psychotic shit
to get this information out.
But
and, I mean, maybe you didn't understand what that cost would have been.
The moment
when you first initially came forward with
it comes to light, they have Tourette's and all that.
It's been immense.
Oh well, okay.
I just want to
it's not their fault. Okay,
and thank you
I get
for
it.
all
And you know,
would
you
not
can't help
have
it.
gotten this information. It would not have.
But they think I'm out here just actually wanting to constantly like rage and shit.
And thank you, Jeremy. And one more time, the documentary is available on Netflix right now.
Yeah, it's called Bob Lazar.
Like, it's literally ruined my life. Why would I want this?
That's it, folks. Good night.
It's ruined my life. Why would I want it, you know? And that's the thing. I need to confront people on that. Like, that needs to be spoken out about more. Because BPD's reactionary.
It's like you gotta start speaking. Like, oh shit.
Here we go. And boom, we're live. Graham, great to see you again.
Nice to be back with you, Joe.
And we were just talking about your new book, America Before, that there's two versions of it. There's one version, and then there's a newer version that's a Barnes & Noble version that's specific to Barnes & Noble that has an extra whole chapter in it.
That's correct.
What?
Yeah, and so they can get that at Barnes & Noble. I'm just trying to keep bookstores alive, man. They're
I
on the
think
way
it's
out.
really important, and that's one of the reasons that I did this, because I finished the book, and then Barnes & Noble came to me through my publishers and said they would like to do a special edition of the book, but in order to do that I needed to write them some extra material. And I had a lot of material that I hadn't put in the book, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity to put that out there.
Beautiful. So if people want that, it's a little bit different, and there's a small gold.
Well, okay,
feet.
so first of all, my website, grahamhancock.com, has a page about America Before, and the link to the Barnes & Noble edition is there, as well as the link to the standard edition, which is on Amazon and iTunes and all kinds of other places. So grahamhancock.com and the America Before page, the link to the Barnes & Noble edition is right there.
All right, there it is. So, how is this? Well, before we even get into the book, what is it?
Go to Talks and Events.
Okay, we're on the Graham Hancock website.
No, go to books. So, go to books. Go to America Before.
Bam.
He said, okay.
There it is.
Go to United States, you can see Amazon, Barnes, and there's Barnes & Noble.
Special edition.
Special edition. Click on that.
There you go. And then the ebook as well. The
ebook
is
is
a special
available. The
edition as well.
audio book, which I read myself, is available there. Then if you scroll down, oops, that shouldn't be there.
Damn pop-ups.
Damn
Sons of
pop-ups.
bitches. I am so happy you read it yourself. I get angry when someone else reads someone who I'm like, come on, he can talk.
Yeah, I enjoy reading my books myself, and what I've learned from feedback I get from audiences at presentations is people like me doing that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's just weird when someone else is talking in your voice. Like, hey man, I know you're not Graham.
You know that I write fiction as well as
Yes.
non-fiction.
Yeah.
And the one thing I can't read is my fiction.
Really?
Well, yeah, because fiction requires accents. You really need an actor
Yes.
to read a fiction book who can get into the different characters. But for a non-fiction book like America Before, it's very straightforward for me just to read it myself.
I agree. I'm a tremendous Stephen King fan, but when I read Stephen King's books where he reads them or listen to them when he reads them, they're terrible. He's awful at it.
I don't think a novelist should read their own novels. I think that's a job for an actor. Oddly enough, I've just been reading Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Very near the end of the 7th volume of that.
Yeah, I'm just a giant fan of his, but
Me
man,
too.
when he
Thank
reads
you.
it, he reads it like he's just reading it. Yeah, it's like, ooh, this is rough. It's hard to get behind. Anyway, America Before.
So
give us
on the website. There's details about the book. There's a page where there are links to the book, and also the other thing I would like to take this opportunity to mention is I'm in America and Canada for the next 7 weeks, and I'm going to be doing something like 25 presentations in something like 20 American cities, and then 3 Canadian cities in Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto, and that's all on the talks and events page of my website. So if anybody wants to come along and meet this old man in person, I'll be doing those events.
And are you doing these at theaters, and do you allow Q&As? Like how does this work?
Absolutely, I allow Q&As. I encourage that. I feel as an author that, frankly speaking, I'm nothing without my audience. I owe my audience, my readers, big time. And what I try to do at events is to give back as much as I can. So if people want to take pictures with me, I am absolutely up for that. I don't understand why anybody would want to do that, but it's fun. It's kind of fun. And when people want to come to the desk where I'm signing and ask me personal questions, I'm ready to do that. Sometimes on the British book tour, which I just finished, I was behind in the event space for 4 hours after the event.
Shoulder pad?
Wow. Signing and taking pictures. But it's a joy. It's a really opportunity for me to interact with the people who actually make my work better.
So that's fantastic. Beautiful. So what inspired this? I know there's always been, well, first of all, we should just say, for people who don't know, you have been at the front of the line for decades, talking about these lost civilizations and
the ammo.
From reading your work, I think I first read your work in the 90s.
The subsequent
You exposed me to a lot of these, were at the time, controversial ideas that have now been substantiated by actual evidence, particularly about Tepe and all the water erosion stuff on the Sphinx, and I've since had Dr. Robert Chalk on the podcast to talk about that as well. But all this stuff was at one point very controversial, and now far less. I mean, whatever traditional academics and traditional historians that are trying to, this is archaeologists, that were trying to resist, they've let go a lot of that. They've had to with things like Göbekli Tepe.
They've had to because the evidence has overwhelmed them. And Göbekli Tepe is an excellent example. Prior to the discovery and excavation of Göbekli Tepe, which is a site in Anatolia in Turkey, it was viewed very firmly that there had been no megalithic architecture anywhere on Earth. And when I say megalithic, I mean literally big stones, stone circles, huge constructions, nothing like that before at the very, very earliest 6,000 years.
That's the kind of dickhead I would be on the battlefield.
To sites in, for example, Malta, a site called
someone
GMT,
picks up like a fucking RPG and they start like getting positioning it. I just fire a bullet straight down the fucking barrel.
These were agricultural societies. They generated surpluses.
Wait, I'm sorry.
People who could become specialists in architecture, astronomy, and geometry, and they could apply their skills to the construction of these sites. But what they never considered possible was that a society that was hunter-gatherers would have created a gigantic megalithic site, and then suddenly Göbekli Tepe is discovered. It dates to 11,600 years ago. It's more than 5,000 years older than the supposedly oldest megalithic architecture in the world. And it is in a center where there had been no previous evidence of agriculture, but the moment Göbekli Tepe appears, agriculture appears as well. And this is just something that's really hard for archaeology to explain. They've suddenly got 5,000 years of missing history that they've just never taken into account. And what I see them doing is largely avoiding the problem, rather than getting to grips with it directly. And in fact, there have been a great number of changes in the last 20 years, which have worked generally in favor of the arguments that I've proposed.
Well, I'm so happy for you because I know that for a long time you were out there on your own with a lot of these theories.
Very, very much so, and also subjected to the most blistering and deeply unpleasant criticism from the archaeological fraternity and from their friends in the media, like how dare this journalist propose that history might be different, or that we might have a forgotten chapter in the human story. It was regarded almost as offensive that I would put this material out there, and archaeologists felt it was their responsibility to show the public that I was full of shit, and that was the whole way my work was greeted, and to a certain extent still is greeted by archaeologists. But things have changed. Central to my work was the notion of a global cataclysm, roughly 12,500, 12,800 years ago. There was It made sense to me in 1995 when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, but there was no compelling evidence for a global cataclysm then. All the evidence seemed to point to that time and a massive global event. And then from 2007 onwards, more than a decade after I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, we get a group of more than 60 major scientists who are seriously proposing that the Earth was hit by multiple fragments of a giant comet 12,800 years ago, and that this caused a huge rise in sea level and extinctions of megafaunas.
It did.
They are not saying that it also wiped out a lost advanced civilization of prehistory. I'm saying that.
Yes.
But what has changed is that we now have compelling, hard scientific evidence. I'm not saying every scientist accepts it. It's the nature of science to dispute findings, but we have a group of 60 major figures who have seriously proposed this in all the leading mainstream journals, and it's changed the balance of power in this argument, because one thing that they used to say is Hancock can't be right because there was no global cataclysm 12 or 13,000 years ago. Well, now we know there was, and there are various explanations for it, so that's moved things along. And the other thing that's changed a lot is the attitude of the man in the street to authority. That has changed. Back in the 90s, authority figures were the gatekeepers. They controlled everything. If an authority figure in a discipline like archaeology said, Hancock is completely wrong, he's made all this stuff up, that would generally be believed, not by everybody, but by the majority of people. Today, to have a mainstream authority figure say that to me is actually an advantage, because people are so distrustful of authority, and rightly so, because we've been lied to by authority figures in all fields for so long. The bullshit has been so enormous that people are finally waking up, and we can't trust what authority figures say.
And I think we can thank the internet for that.
We can thank the internet for that, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the more recent evidence of a crater that they just discovered, like fairly recently.
Greenland.
Yes, enormous.
It's an enormous crater. It's 18 miles wide. It had not been discovered before because it's under ice. It's under a lot of ice. At the end of the Ice Age, Greenland was one area which never lost its ice cover completely, whereas North America, everywhere north of Minnesota, was covered in ice a mile, sometimes 2 miles deep. Europe the same, Northern Europe. But Greenland kept its ice, whereas the other parts of the world lost their ice at the end of the Ice Age. And what's interesting about Greenland is there's already evidence of comet impact in Greenland, which goes back to papers published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2013, that they found what are called impact proxies in Greenland, in other words, nanodiamonds, carbon spherules, and evidence of a lot of platinum and iron was found in a layer in the ice dated to 12,800 years ago. But the next development, and you're absolutely right, and this was just a few months ago, was the discovery of this humongous crater in Greenland, and evidence that it was caused by an iron impactor of some kind. Now, dating of it, I would be irresponsible to say that that crater definitely dates to 12,800 years ago, because the work has not been done to prove that yet. But what I can say, and what the specialists who have explored and excavated the crater are saying, is that it's recent. They can say for sure that it happened during the last ice age. Under the crater is nothing but massively disturbed and destroyed and completely wrecked ice from the Ice Age, from the Pleistocene. Above it is smooth, perfect ice from our epoch, which is called the Holocene, which began about 11,600 years ago. So all the evidence suggests that this crater dates to that period between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, but to absolutely confirm that, more work needs to be done. But it's part of a growing pattern. The Younger Dryas impact scientists, they call themselves, they call this the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, and it's because there was a period in the Earth's geological history that geologists call the Younger Dryas, which lasted for 1,200 years, from 12,800 to 11,600 years ago. It's a very mysterious period. We see all the megafauna dying off suddenly and rapidly. We see rises in sea level. We see a huge collapse in global temperature. It's a cataclysmic epoch, and what is becoming clearer and clearer is that the evidence that a comet was behind it is extremely strong. And as more and more evidence comes in, we realize how widespread it was. So they found evidence of the impacts as far south as Antarctica now. Previously they were focused very much on North America. Now as far south as Antarctica, as far east as Syria. This is truly a global event, and it changed the world. And I think, and it's my case, that it wiped our memory of a previous episode of human civilization.
Yep.
Right at the epicenter of this cataclysm was
Yep.
a civilization
There's only
that we
crumbles
would
left.
regard as advanced, not a simple hunter-gatherer civilization, which was utterly wiped out in this cataclysmic event.
And I should say, for anyone who's really fascinated right now, please maybe pause and go listen to the one the two that you did with Randall Carlson,
Yes.
where it really goes into
just
depth
sit here?
about the impact, the evidence of these impacts, the evidence of the very quick demise of the
Are
Ice
you gonna sit
Age,
here?
and what may have resulted in all these floods that you read about in the Epic of Gilgamesh, that you read about in Noah's Ark, and that all
Never
these
mind.
things are probably tales of stories that people pass down from generation to generation that survived this time.
Yeah, because we now know that at that time, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, truly global cataclysmic events involving rapid rises in sea level did occur, and suddenly the worldwide tradition of a global flood stops being just a myth and starts being a memory, an account of real events. It's been my privilege to work very closely with Randall Carlson.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Randall is absolutely amazing. He is a total genius. He's also a gentle giant and such a kind, generous, spirited person. It's a joy to work with him, and every minute spent with him is an education. I had the privilege of traveling across the Channel Scablands in Washington State with Randall, and seeing things through his eyes really opened my eyes to the scale of this disaster. You know, you could look at these giant boulders called glacial erratics, and they just look odd sitting there in the landscape, but when you really consider how they got there, that they got there in icebergs the size of oil tankers, that were carried on floods that were at least 500 up to 1,000 feet deep, that were tearing through the channeled scablands, literally ripping the landscape apart. Then the icebergs would ground on valley sides, the flood waters would recede, the icebergs would be left, they're giant icebergs, and as they melted away, they revealed the rocks that they had enchained that were caught up within them, and they're scattered all over the landscape. And you look at that and you think, anything that was underneath that 12,800 years ago is gone completely. There can't be anything left of it at all. Utterly, utterly destroyed.
And I would encourage people that are interested in this to please watch the YouTube videos of it, because Randall provides all sorts of video and photographic evidence where you can take a look at the landscape and you get a perspective of how immense this destruction was.
Yeah, it's really important to see that, because it's easy enough to talk about floods and cataclysms, but actually to see its effect on the landscape directly it has an emotional impact. I felt emotional traveling across the Channel Scablands, realizing that this was the heart of an event that changed the world completely.
I thought you wanted to watch this.
No, I haven't, in America before, I've not gone over old ground that I went over in Magicians of the Gods, that we covered in the various interviews and podcasts, in which it's really a good idea that people take a look at. But what I have done is added the new information published since 2015, which further supports the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis and the notion that multiple fragments of a giant comet hit the Earth and created an absolute global catastrophe.
So what was the motivation behind creating this book, America Before?
It's a curious mixture of things. I have been exploring the possibility of a lost civilization for more than 25 years. That was the essence of my book, Fingerprints of the Gods, that was published in 1995, that there has been a huge forgotten episode in human history. I continued to follow that in a series of other books, and by the time I got to 2002, when I published a book called Underworld, that followed 7 years of scuba diving on continental shelves, looking for structures that were submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, I really felt I'd done it. I felt I'd walked the walk. I'd put out to the public a massive body of information, and I thought my role in this is over, and I can breathe a sigh of relief because it's hot in this particular kitchen, and I can go do something else. And I ended up writing a book about psychedelics. I ended up writing Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind, about the role of psychedelics in the origins of the human story. But then new information started to come out that touched on the lost civilization idea, and I couldn't just stand by and ignore that information. That's why I published Magicians of the Gods in 2015. And then, as I was researching that book, I became aware of something I hadn't realized before, that there's a mass of new information from the Americas, specifically from the Americas, which completely rewrites the story of human history, that the Americas have been misrepresented for a very long time by archaeology, and archaeologists will be annoyed with me for saying that. They have a way of forgetting their own errors, of saying, oh, well, we knew that all along. It wasn't the case. But the fact of the matter remains that for the best part of 50 years, from the 1960s through until about 2010, American archaeology was locked in a dogma that they actually had a name for, which was Clovis first. That they invented a name for a culture. They called them the Clovis culture. We don't know what they called themselves. They were hunter-gatherers. They first appear in the archaeological record 13,400 years ago, and they vanish from the archaeological record 12,600 years ago. And for a very long time, it was maintained adamantly that these were the first Americans, that no human being touched the soil of the Americas until 13,400 years ago. Just animals, but no human beings present at all. And any archaeologist who attempted to dispute that dogma, and I use the word deliberately, there should be no room for dogma in science, but any archaeologist who challenged that would face severe problems with his or her career. They would be mocked and humiliated at conferences, like an archaeologist called Jacques Cinq-Mars from Canada, who excavated in the Yukon. Humiliated at conferences, insulted, accused of making stuff up. Their research funding would be withdrawn. Basically, to challenge Clovis first was the end of your archaeological career. So naturally, very few archaeologists wanted to challenge Clovis first.
What was this gentleman in the Yukon? What was this?
He's called Jacques Cinq-Mars. And interestingly, the Smithsonian, just in 2017, did a big kind of mea culpa, a big admission about this, that everybody had got things wrong, that Jacques Cinq-Mars had been ruined by the Clovis first lobby, but he'd been right all along. The site he excavated in the Yukon was re-excavated in 2017, and every single thing he said was correct, even though they had just sneered at him.
In what year was he?
He was excavating in the 1980s and the 1990s.
Is he still alive?
He's still alive. He's still alive, yeah.
Is it better?
Well, I think he's vindicated, you know, and it's kind of nice to be vindicated.
Yes.
That there's almost a place in folklore for the individual who is scorned and humiliated, you know, by others, but who turns out to be right, and he was right. But my point about this is that what it meant was, since it was the dogma that Clovis was first, that the oldest dates were 13,400 years ago, there seemed to be no logic to archaeologists in digging deeper. You know how it is with archaeology, that the upper levels are the youngest, and the deeper you go, the older it gets. That's why we say Upper Paleolithic for the late Ice Age, and Lower Paleolithic for the late Stone Age, and lower for the older Stone Age. And the feeling was, no need to dig below the Clovis layer, because we already know that there were no human beings there before that. And then a few archaeologists, I've mentioned Jacques Cinq-Mars, but another is Al Goodyear from the University of South Carolina, who excavated a site called Topper in South Carolina. Now Topper is an incredibly rich Clovis site. It's full of their tools, their points. They made these special flint points that were used as arrowheads and spears. A great Clovis site. He finished excavating the Clovis level, and then he did something that was supposed not to be done. He decided to dig deeper, and he carried on digging down, and there was a layer of about 1.5 meters of barren soil, and then beneath that, more human artifacts, and they finally date those back to more than 50,000 years ago. And then in 2017, published in Nature, by Tom Desmarais, who's the chief paleontologist at the San Diego Natural History Museum, and a bunch of other very high-level paleontologists, published in Nature magazine, evidence for human presence in North America 130,000 years ago. Now, this has really put the cat amongst the pigeons. Now, if humans were present in North America 130,000 years ago, and archaeologists have been telling us for 50 years that they were only present from 13,000 years ago, that's 10 times as long that we've had humans in North America capable of doing stuff, and the archaeological dogma has prevented any search for what they were doing until very recently.
What was the evidence from 130,000 years ago?
Okay, so it's not the, let me be clear about this, because this is something that is often misrepresented in my views. It is not the evidence for an advanced civilization that we find 130,000 years ago in America. The evidence that we find is evidence for human presence. But what they were doing was very much Stone Age stuff. It's a mastodon. It's a mastodon skeleton that was excavated. It was actually found by accident during road construction near San Diego. And an archaeologist was attached to the road construction crew and immediately stopped construction, and they investigated it thoroughly. And what they found was so much dynamite in the early 1990s when they found it that they decided not to publish at the time. Because what they found was evidence that those mastodon bones had been cracked open by human beings using tools, and that the marrow had been extracted, that one tusk had been left standing upright in the ground and another had been left beside it, that a femur of the animal had been taken away completely from the site, and there was assemblages of instruments that were used to smash and break the bones. And the conclusion of the team was that only one kind of creature could have done that work using tools on a mastodon, and that's human beings. That's classic human behavior. So this sets the goalposts in a totally different place. Suddenly we have to consider that humans have been in America for 130,000 years. We already know that a dogmatic approach of archaeology has rather refused to look at anything older than 13,000 years ago. And what it does is it generates an engine of demand that we need to be looking at those missing 100,000 plus years. We need to be looking at it hard. Of course, the immediate reaction has not been to go looking for stuff in the other 100,000 years. Most archaeologists have responded by saying this is impossible. It can't be so. But that's precisely what they said to Jacques Cinq-Mars, who said that humans were in Bluefish Caves in the Yukon 25,000 years ago. And it's precisely what they said to Al Goodyear, who said humans had been at Topper 50,000 years ago. And they were both right. And I believe that Tom Desmarais and his team, you don't get a big article published in Nature unless it's already pretty solidly based and pretty much peer reviews. It has produced a reaction. I would be wrong to say that it's universally accepted. It's very much challenged, but it's intriguing.
What is the challenge?
The challenge fundamentally comes from, we archaeologists know that there were no human beings in the Americas that far back. To put it in perspective, it's about 60,000 years before the first evidence of human beings in Europe. It's about 60,000 years before the first evidence of human beings in Australia.
And this is just evidence of the first human beings.
Yes.
We have to point out how difficult it is to find evidence.
It's extremely difficult to find. You know, sometimes we imagine that archaeologists are working with masses of skeletal material. No, they're not. They're not. I mean, this is one of the ironies. The whole Clovis first dogma, you would think that they had masses of material to work with. They did have the tools, but in terms of skeletal remains, just one. Just one single skeletal remain.
Now, one of the things that Michael Shermer had sent me was this dispute that perhaps the bones had been cracked open by the excavation material, by the excavation machines.
I saw Michael's email last night, and I appreciate that Michael wants to continue to engage with this subject, and that's his job. He's a professional skeptic, and it's his right to do so. But what he misses out, it's true that a new paper has been published, which raises questions over the what's called the Cerruti Mastodon site, which is the site that Tom Desmarais at San Diego Natural History Museum excavated. And what's interesting, since Michael took the trouble to write the questions, can I just read you something that I responded to on this?
Sure.
Which is that
just to the microphone.
Yeah. Basically, this paper was in no way a refutation of the original paper in Nature. As a matter of fact, the gentleman who wrote that paper never even looked at the archaeological remains that are now in the San Diego Natural History Museum. What he based it on is reference, I'm quoting from the abstract of the paper itself, reference to a freeway right-of-way map and construction plans, contemporary road building practices, and worksite photographs available on the internet. In other words, the site was not visited. They simply looked at secondary references. They did not look at the archaeological material, and they ignored the entire argument of Tom Desmarais and his colleagues, who had already addressed that issue.
They didn't look at the bones?
They did not look at the bones. When you break a fresh bone, it has a characteristic kind of spiral fracture that does not happen when you break a fossilized bone. And Tom Desmarais and his team specifically ruled out road-making machinery as responsible for this braking pattern because they actually carried out experiments on modern elephants, deceased elephants, and they broke their bones, and the kind of fracture that you get in a fresh green bone is completely different from the kind of fracture you get in a fossilized bone. So unfortunately this paper pays no attention to that. It just looks at road plans and says there was road work there, it must have been done by road work. I think it's very sloppy, very weak, and it's certainly not the answer. We can expect ongoing debate, and that is healthy, but this is not a strong case at all.
So this points to the first evidence that we found. And is there any effort underway to try to uncover more evidence that, from a similar time
Well,
period?
I'm going to cite Tom Demery, the chief paleontologist of the San Diego Natural History Museum. That's what he would like to see. He makes the point to me. I interview him. I spent a day with him at the Natural History Museum. He was very generous with his time. I did an extended interview, and I quote from it in America before. And his wish is that archaeologists, instead of spending all their time trying to find ways to dismiss and get rid of his findings, his wish is that they would spend a little bit of that time looking at deposits older than 13,400 years, and even being willing to go back as far as 130,000 years. That would be a proper scientific response. Here is a thorough body of work put forward by a very senior group of scientists who hesitated before they published it. They had the information back in the 1990s, but it wasn't until refined dating techniques later than in the 21st century that they finally were sure what they had, and that they published it in Nature in 2017. It's an important study, and I think what's going to happen is that we're going to find much more evidence of a very ancient human presence in the Americas, and that's what Tom Demery thinks as well. And as he points out, if we don't look, then we're never going to find it. We allow dogma to stop us looking and saying, oh, it's impossible that humans were in the Americas 130,000 years ago, so we won't bother to look. What a failure of science that is. And to spend all the time instead
I punch exploder shanks too.
That it doesn't fit the current paradigm.
Well, it's so fascinating that just this fortuitous discovery during a construction site could change the way people perceive things. You've got to wonder how much of that stuff is I mean, how deep did they have to go to find these
Guardians of Rome?
Well, so this is a road cut that's being made. So those would be pretty deep down, 10, 15 feet down. The grader is going through and flattening them. It varies from place to place,
right
depending
there,
on,
but it's
on soil
sore and I feel
composition,
it, and that
the stratification of the soil. But what the key point is that what you need to do is go deeper than 13,400 years ago, and you need to do so with dedication.
What is that? I don't know, but it feels good getting it.
And with some kind of funding. And at the moment,
Speak to me, not you.
Don't say, oh yeah, I felt good.
Wait,
You're hitting the actual spot.
By Tom Demery was a low. If there was nothing else but that, I wouldn't place so much trust in it. But I've spent a lot of time during the researching of this book with archaeologists who dig deep.
Just holding it there?
Deeper. And
Why?
what those archaeologists all confirm is that there have been
I want you to like do my shoulders. Can you please do my shoulders?
That can be pushed back to 130,000 years ago, because part of the argument about the people in the Americas has to do with a place that we now call the Bering Straits, between Alaska and Siberia, which during the Ice Age were at times.
Yeah, that doesn't mean. Oh my God, I love pizza. What, you're feeding me pizza every fucking day?
That land bridge from Siberia, on many occasions, over periods of tens of thousands of years, would find themselves confronted then by the North American ice cap, which oddly wasn't at the tip of Alaska, but began further in. So there was living space in a bit of Alaska, but you couldn't get through the ice mountains. These literally ice mountains, 2 miles deep, covering the whole of North America, and preventing access to the unglaciated parts of America. The thing is that what happened around 13,400 years ago, there had been a period of warming. The ice sheets,
can you like please think and hit the right spots? No, I'm not. No, you're not moving anything around.
Migration came through that corridor.
Well,
You're just like, like you're like a fucking, you're like a kindergartner coloring.
Years ago, there was an episode of global warming, an ice-free
You're not
corridor
thinking.
opened up, and the same
You're
opportunity
just
came
doing.
into the Americas.
Well,
the mean part of you right now.
You know what? Drop yourself.
Emery's point and mine is that we have to pay much more attention.
That was pointless. It didn't do me anything. I regret asking.
Really, why I've gone ahead and written this book is to try to put before a broad general audience, hopefully in language that makes sense, and a summary of all the latest information.
I mean, Jesus, I get it with like the hands, and maybe they're not strong enough, or they're sore, or like they hurt really quickly when you do it for too long. I get that.
As it now appears to be, then our whole understanding.
That other shit was just laziness and not giving a fuck.
It's the history of the entire world. It has been
just say no.
An absolute article of faith.
Hey, could you do this for me? No. Okay.
In the old world, and indeed, I have a book in my library called "History Begins at Sumer," and it's by Samuel Noah Kramer, a very renowned archaeologist. And it's a good book, actually. But the argument is that this is where civilization began, in the culture that we call the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and that it began about 6,000 years ago, and that civilization is entirely an invention of the old world. It has nothing to do with the new world at all, because the new world was populated so late. This has been the argument, and this is the argument that now radically and suddenly begins to change, that the Americas, this enormous landmass, resource-rich, bountiful in every way, south of Minnesota, south of the ice cap, vast land areas that are bountiful, get into South America, Central America, South America, the Amazon, just huge areas of land that were very, very, offered great potential for human occupation. Dogma has said there were no humans there. Now the first bits of evidence are coming out that says there were humans there. And if that's the case, then we must consider the possibility that the story of civilization might have begun in the Americas, not in the old world at all. It might be a new world invention, not an old world invention.
Some of the more fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways that they've found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way but by humans creating irrigation, humans creating, like, it appears like grids, like a city grid.
Definitely. The Amazon is a colossal mystery, and it's one of the subjects that I explore in depth in America.
Because it was a garden.
First of all, to give some basic figures.
And then people died, and then the jungle took over because it was a garden. That's why there's so much fucking fruit and shit there.
In area. And within it, 5.5 million square kilometers remains almost entirely unstudied by archaeologists, and that's the 5.5 million square kilometers that is still covered by dense rainforest. And to put that into perspective, 5.5 million square kilometers is the size of the entire Indian subcontinent. So it's like saying we've done world archaeology, but we've just ignored India. You know, we've done world archaeology, but we've just ignored the Amazon. It's the same argument. 5.5 million square kilometers. The view was, again, there was a dogma. There was a preconception. Human beings couldn't have flourished in the Amazon. It's not a resource-rich area. The soils are poor. It's a difficult area, challenging to get to, very far from the Bering Straits. So the view was that humans hadn't entered the Amazon until about 1,000 years ago. And then gradually, little by little, that view has begun to change. And it's begun to change because of the tragic clearances of the Amazon. Because the Amazon rainforest is literally being cut down and turned into soybean farms and cattle ranches. And in that cutting down process has emerged things that shouldn't be there at all. For example, evidence that large cities flourished in the Amazon. Enormous cities, which were larger than there was a Spanish explorer who went down the Amazon River system in 1541 to 1542. He was the first European to cross the entire length of South America from west to east along the Amazon. He reported seeing incredible cities, advanced arts and crafts, millions of people, a thriving culture. And 100 years later, when other Europeans got into the Amazon, they couldn't find these cities. So they said, oh, Francisco Orellana, that was his name, made it all up. It was just a fantasy. And then in the last decade, as the clearances of the Amazon have proceeded, we've begun to see the traces of those cities. What happened was that the Spaniards brought smallpox into the Amazon. Smallpox devastated the local population because there was no immunity to it. There was a massive die-off. The cities were deserted. Within 50 years, they were completely overgrown
She
by the
said
jungle.
she wanted to express
they were not
herself,
seen
so
by the explorers
I
who
gave
came
her a
in 100
thumbs
years
up.
later. But now the jungle's being cleared, those cities are emerging, and we can say that a city like London, which had a population of roughly 50,000 in the 16th century, there were cities of that size all over the Amazon. Huge numbers of them. And a possible total population of the Amazon that exceeded 20 million people.
What?
Yes, 20 million. This is the latest evidence from the Amazon. And then you ask yourself, how did they do that? How did they feed 20 million people in the Amazon? Because it's a fact, rainforest soils are poor. It's one of the reasons these soybean farms are a really stupid idea, because once you clear the rainforest, the land is largely unfertile and you can't grow stuff on it for very long. So how did they feed all these people? The answer was, they invented a soil. And that soil has a name. It's called terra preta. Archaeologists refer to it as Amazonian dark earths or Amazonian black earth. It's a man-made soil. It's thousands of years old. It's full of microbes that are not found in adjoining soil. It's based around biochar. And you can take a handful of 8,000-year-old terra preta and you can add it to barren soil, and that soil will instantly become fertile. It's highly sought after in the Amazon, and it explains how they fed these people. There was science in the Amazon.
How did they create this?
Well, this is something that's not understood. It's still not understood by soil experts to this day, is how that was done. But it's one of many intriguing pieces of evidence of much higher development in the Amazon that it has been given credit for, and of a kind of science in the Amazon.
Jamie's got an image of it up there. So this is it. This is terrible. Wow.
Exactly. And
so was that done by burns? Did they use controlled burns?
They did. One way that it was achieved was to do wet burning of middens. They would be burned and smolder. They wouldn't burn fiercely, which just produces charcoal. They would burn and smolder.
What do you mean?
Well, your frustration with the way I was doing it, I was kind of like, well, I think it's gonna do most of the work. So it's just like moving it along.
Mailing it in.
What?
Mailing it in.
I don't know what that means.
It's a phrase. Look it up. How could I not?
Composting, some sort of advanced composting.
But that just makes me more frustrated, because it's always about y'all's frustration.
Is the microbial content of these soils. So there, first of all, is an issue of how, two things, how large populations get fed in the Amazon, and evidence that there was a culture in the Amazon that was capable of manipulating the environment in such a way that it could support large populations.
Another man said it's cruel, bringing violence to the system.
Previously not recognized. The Amazon is
Show them
The
its futility.
Amazon is a man-made rainforest. There are certain trees, the silver trees or the ice cream bean tree, which are higher, which are very, very in other words, selected certain trees, which they then cultivated and grew. So it's one of the large cities, large populations. I love this music. others that have been identified for the first time with LiDAR. You can see what's under the trees.
What is LiDAR?
Light imaging. Unique helicopters, and but it doesn't damage the rainforest. You can strip away and see what's there. And if this isn't too much of a diversion,
That's right, Guardian. The salvage crew is already en route to strip this cat's
bare. It's not more than 100,000 square kilometers.
We are not here for your enrichment, Spider.
It is filled with intriguing Mayan ruins. Everybody has heard of Tikal. What archaeologists didn't know was that literally within walking distance of Tikal, surrounding that whole area were more than 60,000 structures that they hadn't identified. And these have all been identified by LiDAR.
Be one of those squad, You'll be good against the shields.
Our crewmates are eager to fight alongside you, Guardian.
Geometrical skills work with the arms, and then thirdly, the scale of the sites of hundreds of meters, gigantic earthworks on the scale of hundreds of meters, tells us that this was and then inside it is a square bridge. And then there's another things like that, and a circle is like a road right through there. Well, not a road, yeah, you know, because there's no respect for the ancient world, unfortunately.
And there's another one. Look at that! Wow, that's incredible. How they found the stuff that they found in the Amazon? What imaging technology were they using to find all these?
Initially, it was entirely found because areas of the rainforest had been cleared. Economic interest said, we want to make a cattle ranch here, or we want to make a soybean farm here, so we're just going to clear the Then the next step was what can we and luckily we had a technology which is many more of these sites, and then to get to the sites without destruction and to begin excavation normally accessible through the gut. We have to smoke it or vape it to get that. And the journey lasts, what, 10 to 12 minutes? Not much more than that. Sometimes quite a lot less. What ayahuasca does is it makes DMT available through the gut. The reason it's not available through the gut is because of the enzyme in the gut called monoamine oxidase. That switches off DMT on contact. The ayahuasca vine, which is one of the 2 ingredients of the ayahuasca brew, the other ingredient is leaves that contain DMT. The ayahuasca vine contains a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which switches off the enzyme in the gut and allows the DMT to be accessed orally, which produces a lot of the smoke or vape.
Some fucking asshole really wanted to throw.
Interrelate in strange landscapes of which you find yourself amongst them. To an alert, normal problem-solving state of consciousness, and they will paint and depict their visions.
I don't play with teams. I don't play like teams.
I go into it in the book. Is there quite a number of Tucano paintings of the other world, of the afterlife realm, of the entrance to the other world, are geometrical, and they look. So I'm beginning to wonder whether these geoglyphs were part of a system of spiritual ideas concerning what happens to us after death and what we need to do in this life to ensure a beneficial outcome. And oddly enough, that same system of ideas is found in the Mississippi Valley. In the Amazon, it involves particularly ayahuasca and the belief that the ayahuasca journey takes you to the afterlife realm and a journey along the Milky Way. In the Mississippi Valley, the mound builder sites up and down the Mississippi Valley, particularly Moundville in Alabama, exactly the same system of religious ideas associated with geometrical constructions, that on death, the soul, they're very specific, ascends to the constellation of Orion, transits from the constellation of Orion to the Milky Way, makes a journey along the Milky Way, which they call the Path of Souls, and encounters challenges and ordeals where the soul must account for the life that it has lived. Then we go to Egypt, and what do we find? The same system of ideas. The soul must rise up to the constellation of Orion. There's a narrow shaft cut through the southern side of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which targets directly the lowest of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. Widely accepted as a star shaft or a soul shaft. The soul would rise up through that shaft, get to the constellation of Orion, which stands by the banks of the Milky Way. It would then transit to the Milky Way, which the ancient Egyptians called the Winding Waterway, and it would make a journey along the Milky Way where it would be confronted by challenges and ordeals. Very similar idea to the Tucano, very similar idea to the Mississippi Valley. As far as we know, none of these cultures were in contact with one another. Either we're dealing with a huge, unbelievable, extraordinarily detailed coincidence involving architecture and ideas, or we're looking at a legacy that was inherited in all of these different places from a remote common ancestor, and I believe that that's what we're looking at.
What do we think the people from the ancient Mississippi Valley, that culture, what do we think they were using if they weren't using ayahuasca, or do we think that's what they were using?
Well, that's an interesting question, whether visionary substances are the only way to get into altered states of consciousness, and I would say they are definitely not. Of course, there are visionary substances which are used in Native American vision quests. I've had the privilege of the peyote ceremony with the Native American Church.
I've never done that. What is that like?
I loved it, actually. I thought it was amazing. It doesn't overpower you in the way that DMT or ayahuasca does. It's much gentler. It's much more. You feel much more integrated and connected with nature. Your
DMT did not overwhelm.
Are quite clear. It felt just like a very beautiful and healing experience. And I loved the ceremony that I'm inside a teepee with 30 or 40 other people, and there are specific roles that are assigned to those different individuals. One will keep the door, another will be responsible for the fire, which is a work of art in itself. Just gazing into that fire and the glowing embers is enough to induce an altered state of consciousness on its own. Incredible drumming, which drives your state of consciousness into a kind of peak experience. This is a technology for accessing other levels of experience and other levels of reality, and it's clear that the Native Americans had a number of advanced technologies in this area. The sun dance doesn't use a substance, but it uses austerity, it uses pain to drive an altered state of consciousness. The objective in every case seems to be, let's just for a while get ourselves out of the narrow, rigid frame of the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. We all need that. It's incredibly useful. Hunter-gatherers need it just as much as people in cities need it. But it's not the only state of consciousness available to human beings. And maybe that's one of the big mistakes that we're making in our culture, and was not made in shamanistic societies.
That is a really interesting breakdown. That maybe that is one of the big mistakes we're making in our culture. When people point to the problems that we have in this country, one of the problems we have is our inability to connect with each other, or to recognize that we're all sharing this space and time together, and instead wanting to uphold our own religious or ideological ideas as being the only one way to get going, the only one way to get through. And one of the things that I've found with these psychedelic experiences, it really makes ideologies seem, if not preposterous, at the very least insignificant in comparison to human experiences.
Absolutely.
The experience of camaraderie and friendship and love. You realize, like, oh, this is what's important.
This is what
it's
really about.
Not enforcing your ideas or pushing them on other people and forcing people to behave the way you behave, but instead love.
And think about religious ideas, which cause so much division, so much chaos, so much hatred, so much fear, so much suspicion in the world today. Is it really what we want to do as human beings? Simply to accept a package of ideas that were believed in by our ancestors, to accept them whole, without question, as absolute fact, which we regard as such authoritative fact that in some cases we're willing to be deeply unpleasant to people who hold different views, or perhaps even kill them. We've had this recent event in Sri Lanka, primarily a religiously motivated terrorist event. It happens all over the world. People feel so convinced that the inherited package of ideas that they had nothing to do with creating and that they have never questioned, they're so convinced that those ideas are right that in extreme cases they're actually prepared to kill other human beings who hold different ideas.
This stuff that this guy's saying right now is really important and touches on a lot of the things I talk about when it comes to society's problems.
Another human being who holds it. They're so threatened by the other beliefs that other human beings hold. So it's an abnegation of our
preposterous, at the very least insignificant in comparison to human experiences.
Absolutely.
The experience of camaraderie and friendship and love. You realize, like, oh, this is what's important. This is what it's really about. Not enforcing your ideas or pushing them on other people and forcing people to behave the way you behave, but instead
like
love.
Therapy.
And think about religious ideas, which cause so much division, so much chaos, so much hatred, so much fear, so much suspicion in the world today. Is it really what we want to do as human beings? Simply to accept a package of ideas that were believed in by our ancestors.
You don't have to stay and watch it if you don't want
without
to.
question, as absolute fact, which we regard as such authoritative fact that in some cases we're willing to be deeply unpleasant to people who hold different views, or perhaps even kill them. We've had this recent event in Sri Lanka, primarily a religiously motivated terrorist event. It happens all over the world. People feel so convinced that the inherited package of ideas that they had nothing to do with creating and that they have never questioned, they're so convinced that those ideas are right that in extreme cases they're actually prepared to kill other human beings who hold different ideas. Are they so insecure in their own
Before
beliefs
you left.
that they're prepared to go to that
Because
level of
you said
actually
you were going to
murdering
bed.
another human being who holds it. They're so threatened by the other beliefs that other human beings hold. So it's an abnegation of our responsibility as human
Okay,
beings.
are
We
you gonna
should be
like play
questioning
that
things.
game
We
with
should
me right
not be
now?
accepting packages of ideas intact, fully
But I'm
formed,
here right
and
now,
using them
and
to
I
drive
asked,
the way
would
we
you like
behave
it
towards
if
one
I
another.
did the massage
That was
salon?
part of the human story, but
You
we
don't
need to
want
move
to.
on from that. And it's a very dangerous situation in a very
Why would
complex
I be
modern
saying
world
this
with
if I did?
billions
Because
of
you
human beings
feel
on the planet.
bad
How
somehow,
these
or
kind of
for
energies be
something
generated,
in
where
some
certain groups
way,
of people are saying, we
and
are absolutely right and you are absolutely wrong.
you
We
want
are
to feel
superior,
better.
you are inferior. This is a very, very dangerous
You
path
think
that
doing
we're
this
on, and
will
it needs to be changed.
somehow make me feel
Personally,
better suddenly,
I
and
know
so
this
then you'll
is
get to feel
not
better?
a comment that will go down well with many people, but I am strongly opposed to nationalism. I don't see any virtue
It's not about
in
me.
nationalism. It is an accident of birth, which nation you were born in.
Usually,
It was nothing that you did for your own merit. You didn't earn that. You were born by accident in a particular nation. Why should we
Kill
automatically
me, I'll be
feel that other
relieved.
people who were born by accident in that particular nation have something special in common with us, and that we together are a group who are much more important than other groups of people? I've been privileged to spend my
Alright, what?
life traveling around the world, living with communities all over the world, and one thing that really comes across to me strongly, it should be a cliche, and yet it's not, is that we are all one family, that humans are intimately interconnected all around the world, that you can go to the remotest area of the Amazon jungle and find the same hopes, the same fears, the same dreams that we have in industrialized cities, shared by the hunter-gatherers in the middle of the Amazon. So our similarities as human beings and what we share in common at the emotional level and the level of love and at the level of heart are far more important than our differences that are defined by the nation or the political group in which we grew up in. And when I say I'm against nationalism, I need also to make clear that does not mean, and I hope I'm not taken out of context by others who are listening to this, that does not mean I'm in favor of world government. I detest governments. That's another thing we need to grow out of. We don't need governments anymore.
We don't need government, exactly.
A very minimal role in our society.
Hey.
I think it's possible for you.
I'll take the massage. Didn't hear a thing.
I said you're gonna give me a minute because I'm in the middle of something.
What? What are you in the middle of? I fucking can't stand James Corden's stupid fat ass. He's not talented. He's seriously not talented. He's a fucking twat. I'm so sick of hearing the word fat phobia too. Pretty soon I'll probably have some fucking fat bitch trying to talk shit to me about how I'm fucked up because I have the body type I do. You obviously don't eat or take care of yourself. Look how fucking thin you are. Oh my god, you're so unhealthy. Meanwhile, she has to fucking get lard extracted from her veins so she doesn't have a heart attack.
Alright, girl. Did you let it out? Let me do this.
Seriously, though.
I know, I just don't want to.
What?
I'm doing that right now.
Oh my god, you're not. You're. Why? Like. Like. I don't want someone touching me and then having that energy toward me.
Like,
You want to treat me? No. If you're gonna fucking act like I'm like the weird kid in the class or some bullshit, don't touch me.
I wasn't gonna talk about that. I was gonna
Talk about what?
I was gonna talk about what you're talking about. And be like, you know, if it's not something I really want to engage in right now.
It's not even something to engage. It's not. You're acting like we're about to sit down and like fucking go through some textbooks or watch a bunch of fucking movies or something. You're just extra. Which is funny because I'm supposed to be extra. But you're just making all these fucking assumptions because you know. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get what the point was. Like, it's hilarious. People are like, oh, hey, let me do this, do that, you know, sorry about this, sorry about that. And then they'll have something new.
Assumptions are
It's
your
like,
worst
okay. No, people are.
And assumptions are like a tool. Is that how you phrase it then?
No, just people are shit.
No. I was just talking about assumptions. Just because a lot of stuff you deal with, is people make assumptions about who you are, what you're saying, and what that means by your actions. You know, the whole pretty privilege stuff. Like, those assumptions hurt you a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
Why'd you put this back here?
Because that was where it was originally.
Whatever. You're frustrating me, I guess, because you're not deciding what you're gonna do or whatever. You want me to control you, and I don't care to. Yes, you want me to decide things for you. That's why you're just being here and weird. I'm supposed to process my stuff and think about my stuff and make my own decisions and choices while somehow making them for you too, so you can feel okay. Because that way, if something happens, you didn't do it, so you didn't fuck up. You were just doing what you were told. Or fucking, I don't know what else. But that's the fucking game. You all play it. I'm so tired of it.
I don't want to do that and be waiting for instruction. I don't like that.
Then why are you doing it then?
What?
Then why are you doing it?
I don't know. I don't want to, but it's
You don't want to, but you are currently.
It's like a ground state energy level. Like, yes, I wait for command kind of thing.
I don't fucking know, but I know that I don't want you to be that fucking way with me. I don't control you. I don't control you, nor do I fucking want to.
Yeah.
Because for the same reasons someone would want me to control them, because it absolves them of any sort of guilt, blame, or responsibility, allegedly. I blinked out again. I can't even fucking think. I'm so fucking frustrated.
It's about the control people thing. You don't want to control.
Yeah, I'm fucking BPD, and people already have a fucking... They just take my fucking psychological shit for a fucking joyride any moment they can, blaming me for hiding behind my reactions and responses and shit.
I know you don't intend to. Like, and manipulation shit, it's not okay. And we shouldn't be controlling each other.
I don't manipulate. I don't manipulate, at least not fucking consciously.
Yeah.
And I've told you, if I ever am like, you see that, you know, or you think that, you fucking tell me.
Yeah. No. That's why I'm like, that's why I said it right after saying that you don't intend to control kind of thing.
I actively try to, like, it's like the equivalent of me constantly leaving my hands exposed so people know I'm not reaching for a weapon or something.
I mean, this is something that I said yesterday. I'm like, I understand you don't intend it, but it's important for you to keep saying it for other people and for yourself to remind yourself that you aren't that.
Because they're like, no, I don't need to be reminded. I need people to fucking listen. I know. That's not the problem.
Yeah. And honestly, I was thinking about, oh, it's probably still good to tell me, because what if you catch me in like a really bad freeze state and I'm not like thinking about it? It's kind of indicative of society. I don't know. This is stressing you out. I'll stop talking about it.
No, it's not stressing me out any more than I already am.
How can I help you right now? And I'm not trying to be like, oh, tell me to go away or stay or whatever. I just want to help.
What do you want to do?
I'm down to chill. I just
No, you need to tell me what you want to do.
Try to make things better between the two
No.
of us right now.
No. That's not what I'm asking you.
What do I want to do? I mean, sure, like, go to bed and head to sleep.
Alright, then do that.
But, like...
That's what you want to do.
There's also other stuff I want to do. And you're saying that's not what I want to do when that is. Before I go to bed, I want to figure things out between us right now.
There's nothing to figure out.
Alright. Are you okay with me and whatever?
Not really, because this is gonna keep going later because you're holding on to it. You're being weird. You're obsessing. You're like cycling it through your head and you're not gonna stop.
Well, the reason I asked that is so that if you said, like, yeah, it's fine, then I would have left.
My hearing just got weird. Never mind. I don't... Oh, God. You see, like, I'm now, like, stuck having to think about this. Like, oh, well, I guess I have to make a choice. Oh, well, what would they want to do? Oh, well, what would I want? Oh, well, what's going to happen if this? Oh, well, what about... Like, why am I always the fucking one holding the goddamn bomb?
I think it's because it's like...
Be assertive.
The reason is because it's like you are a bomb. You're the one that is more volatile.
I'm not a fucking bomb. That's the thing, though. I'm not a fucking bomb. I'm a person.
The reason I do this, and I'm just trying to be transparent about the way I'm feeling, not justifying. The way, honestly, I think
it's the whole energy of, well, I have to be this way because this. No, you don't, motherfucker.
Bro, please let me talk. it's me avoiding worst case scenarios. I think that's why I get stuck in this state, because I want to make sure.
Creating worst case scenarios, because then this creates frustration on my side, animosity potentially on your side, because you don't get to do what you wanted or whatever, and you're not going to say anything about that. You're just going to hold it inside and let it come out later. And I'm blanked out again because I'm so fucking frustrated. Like,
she's talking about how
you till and fertilize the fields of chaos by trying to not do that.
Yeah, by avoiding it, it's really just
like how many have you never heard stories or seen movies about, oh, we gotta change fate, we gotta change, the future, and then they end up fucking creating the exact thing they were trying to avoid.
Yeah. And I think that's something I struggle with, honestly. Being able to understand, like, when is the right time or place.
It's not always about understanding. Sometimes it's more about being assertive and being you.
Yeah.
Not trying to be someone's underling. You're not my fucking underling.
That's what's happening, because
I don't know why I don't like it, and it disgusts and scares me. Because I have not ever once wanted that, implied I wanted that. I don't enjoy that kind of shit. Like, I don't want any fucking part of it. But now because that's there, I'm gonna get looked at.
And it's also, I'm empowering and reinforcing the bad side.
Yes.
Because it shows, even though I'm trying to calm
if not
to
me, for other people, because other people are gonna see it, and then they're just gonna know because they can see, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing I was thinking about is, like, a lot of times people reinforce bad behaviors for you, and a lot of times when I point it out, it's clear, if you get mad and then they finally help you out, that's reinforcing bad behavior.
Yeah.
But this isn't so clear.
What was she doing?
In the street.
She did like a move, like.
Oh yeah.
Scramble.
Yeah. She a little high, so.
Toss her around again.
Why not?
Make her go meow. You didn't do it though. You're a baby tosser.
I want to keep doing it. But it really is reinforcing it. I need to figure that out more. I think what you did.
There's nothing to figure out. You just need to be assertive.
Well, yeah. What you did was helping in the way of you being like, what do you want to do? Because the thing is, that reality, that is the thing. You're letting me be assertive.
I have to.
Yeah.
I did the same thing when I was dating you-know-who last year.
Yeah.
Because they would keep asking me, or telling me to choose and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but if I just do that, it's going to always be what I want, what I like what I need or want. And that's not what I want. I don't want it to be about me. And also, it builds shit up inside of the person that think like they're being nice, and they're doing stuff for me, but really it comes out to I'm not doing the stuff I want or need, and I'm sacrificing myself on some level for this person, and I'm not really saying anything about it. I'm letting them have all the power, but the moment I don't like something, then I'm gonna bring it up.
Alright, I want to butt in because we went for a while. I mean, the whole thing about, one, I was gonna say, like, you've been doing it more, and I like it when you do say, like, well, what do you want to do? Because it is getting me to recognize, like, oh no, I got the agency here. Like, I have agency to do what I want to do. And the other part of what you didn't say, which we both understand, is by, when of course I have a preference for what I want to do.
Yeah.
But by giving it to you, And then if at the end of the day it ends up worse, I'm just gonna blame it on you because I gave you the option.
Well, I chose.
But it was me who had the power. I gave you the power. Got fucked up, and then I'm like, well, you didn't get my desire. Because no matter what, I have a bias.
It's the equivalent of, like, say you had something to clean or do, and then you just dragged your ass and didn't do anything, and then deadline's coming up, whatever. And then you go to this person, and then you just delegate it to them. And then now they have to get it done. It's their responsibility now.
What?
Oh, but they only have this much time now, and now they failed and fucked up.
Yeah.
Oh, it's their fault.
What?
Wasn't you. You didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then if that person brings up, well, they had it for so long and they didn't do anything on it. They just passed it to me. I had no idea. Excuses.
Yeah.
That's how fucking people are.
It's like you can make a diagram with it. It's like you have me, overarching issue, like A or B. And you have...
Maybe we should make diagrams.
Well, it's like you got A and B. And then on the path there, honestly, it's like within it, you have you. And then I'm arrow to you. I have C and D. And then like the idea in my head is C and D. You choose the right one. It will lead to eventually the right one for me. Because I'm thinking, oh, well, if I give you the option, you're going to choose the right one for you. And no matter what, it will end at my preferred option. However, that's a cause and effect kind of thing. It's like, these are two separate issues. Your, like, you know, the choice I'm giving you is different. I mean, even if it's for the same situation, like, your choice does not equal mine. Your desires aren't mine. And if it's not clear, you're not going to know that I want to end up there. And it's the whole compromise thing is if we're clear about it.
And the dangerous part about it is that it's a compromise that I am not aware of. That's not obvious. That's not direct. So I'm thinking I'm fine, nothing's wrong, it's whatever. When really these things are stacking up, they're building up, these frustrations and shit, and then one day it just fucking explodes, and then now I'm this horrible person, and this and that about me bad, and this, that, and...
Yeah, and in reality, it is a compromise that I'm trying to do, because it's like, with this situation, it was...
You mean it in the right way, but it's not being executed in the right way.
Yeah, because in my mind, I'm like, I can go to sleep or stay here. And then, let's say, go to sleep or stay here.
Are you working at home tomorrow?
No.
Yeah.
You good? What happened? Oh, like, I said no and you, like, really heavily shifted.
I know. I was trying to... had a feeling, and I was trying to handle it.
Okay, sorry.
My physical feeling.
Sorry, I know.
It wasn't about you.
Honestly, okay. Yeah, my way was pointed, but okay. I mean, yeah, it's compromise, because for me, I'm thinking, you know, if they would like this, you know, then I want to help us both out. I'll get to sleep soon, but I'll massage them for a little bit. Hopefully it helps them. Then I get to sleep after. I'm happy. You're happy. But...
That's perfect world scenario, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because who knows what leads to what.
Exactly. And also, who knows if the massage thing is going to go up. Or
so,
if,
yeah, that's what I mean.
In my head, time
you get
is
what
different.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, and time is different for me and you. So in my head, I might think, oh, I'm only going to do it for 5 minutes. But then in your mind, you're like, oh, well, they're here, like...
You have to go to sleep because it's 2:07.
But yeah, I don't know. Thank you for talking. I feel like we've cleared stuff up.
I don't know why you're thanking me. I don't deserve thank you.
I don't know. I'm happy that we had this heart to heart.
I'm not. I wish we didn't have to at all. I wish I was just fucking normal.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's an important conversation to have about me being assertive. And the whole idea of...
I guess. I still get edgy and not sure even with that, because like it still kind of unconsciously makes me seem like some sort of authoritative figure, and I'm not. I'm not, and I don't want to be, and I don't want to act like it or anything.
The thing that I think is like a fear that drags me from not being assertive is the fear of being controlling perceived that way.
Funny you mentioned, because like literally, that's exactly what I'm running from.
Yeah, I don't want to be controlling, so I'm not assertive. Because I think that if I'm going to be controlling, I'm going to be a manipulative
In a roundabout way, though, that is kind of controlling, because it leaves me only with so many options now.
Yeah, it's controlling the situation, but
it's not freedom anymore. It's like you're locked into that psychological maze.
It's doing it in a healthy way. But in my mind, I do the whole, catastrophization, whatever the word is, I do like
Don't make it sound like this is something that's your fault, okay? You're dealing with me, and like I know I'm volatile. Like we have a history now. Like
it's not that. I'm just trying to talk about like the mechanisms kind of in my mind a little bit, because I think of being assertive equals control, and then my mind dramatizes it, whatever that word is. That makes it think one element of control means I'm this awful person. I'm this super controlling person.
That's how I feel.
Why I'm afraid to do,
You're literally dealing with the exact thing that I deal with. Funny enough.
But I avoid.
Well, what?
Well, I'm not trying to. That sounds like I'm blaming you for something.
You're not avoiding anything,
Well, no, like I avoid it completely controlling. And then for you avoid it, or you get forced into it.
Well, often I'm forced into it, and that leads back to what I was saying. Like, I get very uncomfortable when you kind of talk about what you have to learn and all that stuff, because I'm like, oh, no, hold up, I'm the one with BPD, I'm the one with these issues, like, this isn't shifting to you.
I'm also on a journey of
Which is fine. But these motherfuckers want to burn the witch. Anything they can take from me, they can look at me, see me do whatever, even if it's not actually that, they just can twist it to make it seem it's bad. They're gonna do that to me. They already have. That fucking court thing. Talking about, I'll take all that is mine, when I'm talking about, like, my mental health and my therapy and all that other shit, and then the stupid fat piggy fucking bitch wants to be, like, implying that it meant something sinister. Stupid fucking whore. I hope she gets cancer.
Yeah, that is true. And it's,
that's the worst part. When people take things in mind that aren't bad, or negative or anything, and then they warp it into something twisted. It's like, I can't have anything.
Or things you're looking to have get warped before you even have it.
Yeah, actually, and I've brought that up before, how it's like there's always something. I can't ever just have something be good. There's always something.
It's like there's the force field around you that dements stuff. So if you're getting a feedstock, something's coming in, they'll somehow end up getting demented. You won't get the care you need 100%. The product will get delivered damaged. Or if you're trying to do something, give out something.
I get what you mean.
What? Yeah.
I get what you mean.
It won't be the best quality potentially, or it might come off wrong.
It's like how I can call the hospital, my doctors, and like on hold for hours, but then the moment you call.
Yeah, and it's in a way, it's like no matter what, it's gonna be shit. Which also leads into all the other stuff.
That's the biggest thing though. I'm really happy you've seen that though, like calling on the phone thing.
Yeah.
that's the most direct piece of evidence for the phenomenon I experienced that I've ever had, and now I have a fucking witness. Because it's like, of course it would be that way for me.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have problems
It's
with
fucking
phones
weird.
a lot.
It's Black Mirror shit.
I know. You have problems with phones a lot, to the point where I do question if you are doing it right. But then it's also like, but why is this happening a lot? You know?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's in a tricky spot where I recognize being with you is helpful because it provides that other perspective.
Mm.
And also, with your anxiety, it helps. But I also recognize, like, I need to stop doing it all the time. Because I can't be there all the time for you. And you need to be able to...
I know that.
What?
I know that.
Yeah.
Why are you saying that?
Well, I'm just thinking about stuff like how I went to the doctor's visit. I'm thinking like, oh, well, like, you know, this shouldn't... For myself, I shouldn't be willingly doing that, you know, all the time. I shouldn't make that a regular thing.
Make what a regular thing? I don't understand.
Go to your doctor's visits with you.
Okay, what's that got to do?
I don't know, it's just something I was thinking about. It's like...
Why?
Me not being there for every step of the way for you.
But I know that, and I don't want that.
Okay, cool. I wasn't fully realizing that.
How? Well, I've said that exactly, like, so many times in so many different ways. The only time I want you involved in those things only because I want a witness.
Mm-hmm.
I want a witness. That's all I want.
So the thing
because
is,
like if it's just me seeing it or experiencing it, no one's gonna fucking believe me.
Yeah. So the whole me saying I don't realize it, it's because I've seen how shitty things are, how your experiences can be with doctors. Because of that, in my mind, I'm just like, well, it's probably help if I go. Either, you know, help them stay focused more, calm, or I can point out a new perspective.
If I want to bring you on something like that, I mean, sure, it could be anxiety or whatever, but honestly, it's also because I need backup. That's why I literally want a body cam. Like, that's not even a joke. Like, if I had my own place and shit, like, I would set up cameras. Not just for security, but to surveil me. I want to self-surveillance myself. That way, when someone tries to say I did this, I said that, or whatever the fuck, I can just pull that shit out and be like, get fucked, you lying whore.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. It's, I don't know.
People get mad or, like, frustrated or weird or whatever when I talk about that shit, too. Because, like, it's like the house I used to live at with the 6 people and shit. When that fucker was leaving bits of dirty kitty litter outside of my door and all that fuck shit.
Yeah.
That kept happening. People didn't, like, oh, well, they're not doing that. The cat's just walking and this and that. It's like, no, it's fucking bullshit. This keeps fucking happening and it's not fucking me. It's like this little cunt's being passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
And then people would get mad at me about not being okay with it. Like, to the point where that stupid fucking incel bitch, Zach, punched a hole in the fucking wall and screamed in my face about being a psycho. Because... I know, right? I know, right? Like, okay, girl.
Yeah, do you have a final point you want to get to? Because it's going on a little long.
Why would you do that?
I'm trying to wrap stuff up. Because I don't know how long the story's going to be. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are. It's so fucking crazy because, like, I feel like I'm getting heard. I feel like something's being listened to, understood, and then this shit. And it's like, oh, okay then.
In the middle of the Amazon. So our similarities as human beings and what we share in common at the emotional level and the level of love and at the level of heart are far more important than our differences that are defined by the nation or the political group in which we grew up in. And when I
can't deal with this shit. I hate this shit. I can't deal with it. Well, it's because of you. No, it's not. You make your own choices. I'm just over there trying to deal with my own stuff. Shut up. Deal with my own stuff. Handle my own stuff. But then, when shit's not okay, and then y'all standing around frozen or whatever it is, it's my fault. When I was just over there the whole time trying to maintain myself. I know that. I'm tired of being a fucking problem. I'm tired of being a fucking problem. And I don't mean my BPD shit and all this stuff. Like, I know I'm tired of being a fucking problem because of that shit. And I'm doing something about it. But it's when I'm genuinely not a problem or being a problem, everything's optimal with me, that you people have to make me a problem again. That way, nothing's anyone's fault but mine. I'm the fucking scapegoat. That's what happened my entire goddamn childhood.
There's something that happened earlier with how I was like, okay, I found out like, okay, you know, this was the problem with me, but now it's come to side with me, and how the conversation will always be short and quick on my part. If I believe conversation will be short and quick on my issue, and then it'll end on your issue, and it'll be sustained on it. When in reality, it's like the issue in the situation is like Mr. Connection, not that issue. And let's say you have some private, FYI, an actual issue, not a reaction. So
Yes.
it's unfair.
Can you write that down? What you just said? I'm just gonna let you do it. I don't want you to get it down.
Lots of focus on combating the hive, but no Cabal presence on the moon. That feels intentional.
So when it comes to the matter of personal problems with me typically arise from my...
I thought I understood what the Traveler saw in me. now.
And that's why you'd be upset or be disturbed or anything. Flip side though. When I have a problem with someone, it's usually a genuine problem. I may not be expressing it well at all. Like, that's a very real chance, very likely chance. But I'm like dealing with something like direct and actual. Like, it's like the difference between getting rained on and getting hosed. You know, you can't stop the rain. You can put up an umbrella, whatever. But if someone's hosing, like that's a choice, that's action, that's whatever. It's like the same thing with like the bad shit I do. I do bad
Osiris.
shit, whatever.
When he wakes up,
Almost 100%
will he remember me?
It's some sort of episode reaction. Some bullshit. Something you do in my bed. Not justifying, not saying it's right. Must be fixed, must be so. But on the flip side, when it's one of the normal people doing something, it's not a reaction. Not usually. It might be a response and a reaction in that sense. But the point is that they're in direct conscious control of this other person. Like, it's like the difference between dropping a ball and seeing where it lands and then throwing it at a target. Like, I might accidentally hit something and that makes me insecure and just drop it. I shouldn't be dropping it. I shouldn't leave the hold on to it or get rid of it. But I think I would you and then lob it at, people actually trying to help me cause harm. When people do shit to me, then it's intentional and it's to cause harm. That's what gets me so fucked up, is that people are literally using me and not realizing it.
Splicers working with Guardians. Elixni in the city. Things really are changing.
Well, the bad thing is that I'm fucking doing it to them as well with my DPE shit. And I know that, and I hate it, and I want it to stop, and I'm fighting for it to stop. Like, I'm on it. Like, I'm fighting that bitch. Like, but it's not my choice. If it was as simple as, oh, well, how do you want to react? Let's see, look at you. It's like, pissed off, not pissed off. Rage, chill. If I have a conscious choice, like if it was just that simple, I'm choosing chill and shit the whole time. I'm gonna be like, or whatever, just like, I'm not saying I want to ignore the problem or run from it, whatever. Like, I still want to be able to acknowledge it, deal with it, think about it, everything. I just don't want to be like.
Well, the whole thing of the chill is like what the first 11 you did the first semester.
Wonder what Holiday is doing later.
That is 100%.
It's the whole thing about how even cool out is the whole thing about it out. Yeah, it's still.
I thought I understood what the Traveler saw in me. But now...
We need to try to fix that control of it. Yeah, 100% on board. Let's do it. But it keeps happening, and people take it to that place where it's like, okay, well, you're just choosing this. Like, no, it's ruining your life. It's hell. I hate it. It's a reflex. I fucking hate it. It's like, meet me there, and then your leg jerks. It's the same shit. But people don't care because no, they just want to take it as bad person do bad thing, not hurt person, writing pain. Literally, it's like if a doctor was standing right here looking here. It's like at the hospital. I need the painkiller, and I need something fixed. And they weren't really doing much about it, and I was all set off and shit.
I wonder what Holiday is doing later.
Well, the disgusting part is once if people don't take it seriously until they come back. Like, say people hire that and walk away. No, not that. They just go there and have to do your shit. So then walk through that shells after doing all their shit. That's what they say. And then it's still your fault and they're working on that shit because you still do the shit that they actually fucked up on.
Clint, do you want to go listen to the Elixir Storyteller?
I came here not necessarily to talk. I just wanted to whatever. Make sure you were good with it. I didn't mean to talk. I wasn't trying to cover the conversation. What? No, friend, that's what you want to be like. I was just coming because I don't feel
Clint, patch me into Misrax. I thought I understood what the Traveler saw in me. But now...
Yeah. You know what happens when I try? And I didn't even want to like what happens when I try is I find out later no one gave a fuck. And now I just look stupid or crazy or both. Or worse yet, maybe get potentially accused of pushing or coercing people into things. With the way my life has been, with the way people have been about me, with my shit, about like psychological shit, I'm terrified of someone trying to wrap me into something sexual. Especially since the shit I've been through. Not you, I'm just tense. Can you stop? I'm not being aggressive to you at all. I'm terrified thinking about it. Like, if I had gone through with what you said last year about what they wanted me to do, like basically consensual non-consent, like force them down, use them, whatever, I might be in fucking jail right now. And that's terrifying. It's something I also want to report. It's like, I need this because of these reasons. They won't ever see me again, no problem. Let's make sure they never see me again. Now they can't watch my videos and see my socials. Those little that have love. Because here's the thing. How am I to know that the things will even happen were it not for me and how I am? It fucking sucks. Like, I'm fucking self-aware of this shit and like I know it and all this other stuff and I want to fight it, but
When I say I'm against nationalism, I need also to make clear that does not mean, and I hope I'm not taken out of context by others who are listening to this, that does not mean I'm in favor of world government. I detest governments. That's another thing we need to grow out of. We don't need governments anymore. If we have them, they should have a very minimal role in our society. I think it's possible for the human race to relate as one family without leaders and governments who are exploiting the worst aspects of our character, the lowest common denominator of our society, deliberately encouraging fears and hatreds and suspicion. What responsible leaders should be doing is encouraging love and unity, and their failure to do that, in my view, disqualifies them from the leadership role entirely. And that's why I've often said I would like to see a situation in which no head of state can be appointed to that position unless he or she has first had 12 sessions of ayahuasca. That would be the condition. Don't even bother applying for the job if you haven't done this.
And we have to be there while you have it.
And we want to see that you're drinking every drop. And we want an experienced shaman present who's really going to guide you through the journey. And I suspect that that would be a transformative experience for many of our political class, and that they would start to question why they do what they do, why they exploit fears in order to magnify their own position. They start to question that and to wonder about a different destiny for humanity. But that's a dream. I guess it's not going to happen.
Very, very, very well said, and I couldn't agree more. My hope is that what you were saying and what we were discussing earlier about how the internet has sort of eroded our faith in many institutions as being the only or the primary source of knowledge, that I hope that that takes place globally in terms of the way we view government. And that we do, and that your idea of like, I love what America stands for. And what America stands for is kind of a nation that's where people go to. You know, this is one of the more insidious problems with this idea of building walls and keeping people out and making it incredibly difficult to get here. The reason why I'm here is because it was pretty easy to get here. That's why I'm here.
That's the essence of America, a free and open society.
Come here and do better. That's the whole idea behind it. And I would hope that this idea of being able to just, if you want to do better, you can anywhere in the world. This could eventually spread out. This is my hope.
I believe it can spread out, and you know, I see many signs of hope in America. America has become a big part of my life, not just because I wrote this book, but because I have children who are now living in America. I have a son and daughter-in-law who live in LA. I have another son and daughter-in-law who live in Boston. America, I'm British, but America has become a very central part of my life, and it's a fascinating and amazing country, and it's been my privilege to travel thousands of miles across America, across many, many, many different states, and I love this country. It's an amazing place. Only in America could we see happening what has happened with cannabis. You know, the fact that at a local level, individuals have got together, mobilized petitions, organized votes, and changed the law. Changed the law. Literally stuck a finger up at central government and said, fuck off. This is none of your business. What I do with my consciousness in the inner sanctum of my own life is not the business of the state. That's a very American feeling. It's something that you don't find often in other countries where the state is granted much more power and much more authority than it perhaps should be. Americans are naturally questioning of government authority. And that is what has led to the increasing legalization of cannabis, which is going to change the world in lots of ways. But then, ironically, at the same time, see, the thing about democracies is that in order to get things done in a democracy, you need to persuade people of your point of view. So information becomes very important in democracies, and information can be abused. People can be misled with information. They can be told that what they're receiving is the truth, whereas in fact it's not the truth. And you can end up with a kind of dictatorship that the people have given their assent to on the basis of false information. And frankly, I'd rather have a real dictatorship, which is out in the open and clear, rather than one that has been subtly manipulated into position through manipulating the views of the voters. But I am and remain enormously encouraged by America. It may seem like a trivial issue, but the fact that state by state cannabis is being legalized, and that is resulting from a grassroots movement, that this enormous change is being made. It's ironic, it's strange that at the federal level, even though, 8 states now totally legal for recreational, 23, 24 states legal for medical use, that at the federal level it's still a Schedule I controlled drug. This is a huge state of dissonance that exists, and America's going to have to put it right. What it says to me is that people can change things. People can get together at the local level, and they can make a better world. Because there's no doubt that the cannabis laws were vicious and wrong and cruel and evil and ruined people's lives for decades. And it's people who've changed that. It's not government who's changed that. It's the people at the grassroots level. America's a country where that can happen. And I remain encouraged about the role of the American people, while often in despair about the role of the American state.
Yeah, I'm encouraged as well. And, you know, it's interesting, Ben and Jerry released something yesterday, which is really, or 420, I should say, which was talking about the drug laws in this country and talking about how many, it's really opening this, the idea of, like, how unjust these laws were and how many of these laws targeted people of color and how many people who are white people have profited off of this and how many people are still in jail for crimes that they committed, you know, air quote crimes that are no longer crimes.
That are no longer crimes.
Yeah, and this is ridiculous. And these records should be expunged.
They should be completely expunged. I see that California has made some steps in that direction.
Yes.
There has been some expunging of records.
Well, we can only hope that also
people in jail over weed when weed's legal now is bullshit.
Is now going to be on the ballot. Absolutely. And when that opens up, I mean, what you really think marijuana is a gateway drug? Well, guess what? It is if psilocybin gets in.
Yes.
Because psilocybin can legitimately change the world.
It certainly can.
It really, I mean, I think marijuana can change the world, and I